How's everybody doing? We all right? I'm fortunate I didn't get that after lunch slot, where the post kind of trickling a little bit late. Got a little bit of a better position here, so hopefully we have some energy to go ahead and get going. My name is Sherard Robbins. I am the founder and CEO of This Will Change. What we are is we are an organizational development consultancy, specifically specializing in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So our mission is to move diversity, equity, and inclusion from an individual resource to an organizational value. In other words, we work with organizations to figure out how we can center or recenter diversity, inclusion, inclusive excellence in all that it is that we do. Whether that is reframing mission statements, revisiting policies and procedures from the past, offering diversity and inclusion workshops, training and development seminars, things of that nature. We just find different ways to help organizations and individuals center diversity so it intersects with your day-to-day practice. Really the definition of inclusive excellence. But talking about diversity can be tough. It can be challenging at times. So we try to find different ways to have a little bit of fun with it. This is where introversion comes in. Trying to find ways to make diversity and inclusion as digestible and palatable for everybody as possible. I was able to deliver this session at NASPA years back, so this is my second time doing this particular one. I'm happy that it's a solid turnout and people have interest in this conversation as it relates to their higher ed sphere. I did spend some time in the higher ed myself, so I fully understand what it means to be an introvert or work with introverts in this particular area. I am a trainer by trade, so I tend to move around, but my man Miguel here wants me staying put, so I'm going to be right here. I even switched to the podium mic so I can sort of hold myself accountable. So we're going to go ahead and make that happen. But before we begin, how many introverts in the room? Show of hands. Oh, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Introverts Anonymous. That's kind of how this lines up. How many extroverts, just in case I missed you? Okay, I see you. Okay, so then ambiverts, I saw you didn't go up. Any ambiverts in the room? Folks have 10 of that line, okay? This presentation is designed on the introvert-extrovert binary. So my goal was to get the ambiverts in the room to kind of pick us out at the end of the day. But we're gonna just give a lot of information. We're gonna have a little bit of fun. My sessions and workshops are always symbiotic. Although I'm looked at as the expert, I don't believe in that. I think I have as much to learn from you as maybe you do from me. So at any point in time, please feel free to chime in, and I want to learn from you as well. The session is being recorded. You can make sure that gets to folks. I have up here some sheets that I would ask you to, if you want the recording, or if you just want to be a part of our newsletter, just put your name down, your email address, and I'll make sure these get to you as well. All set? Yeah? Yeah. All right. So we're going to break this down into 3 different areas of discussion. The first, we're going to look at what it means to be an introvert. Some signs that kind of indicate you're an introvert. A day in the life of an introvert and introvert makeup. So we'll go ahead and move on to navigating your introversion, which is a little bit of why we're here. Talking about, this idea of wearing the mask. Talking about life skills for survival as introverts. This idea of, as you see, ARAS, which stands for the Ascending Reticular Activating System, and the OLA is your levels of arousal. We're going to talk about the scientific component and the chemical and biological component that goes into being an introvert and an extrovert. So let's touch on that for time purposes. We'll close out with what really matters to us as student affairs professionals, which is the student-centered approach. Graduate student experience, undergraduate experience, how to be better. This is something I've been grappling with for a long time, so you'll see some qualitative responses from undergraduates from different areas of the country, from graduate students as well. And I'd love to hear your stories and how this kind of shaped up for you. I am from Boston, Massachusetts, so I do have an accent. I tend to check it, but if it comes out, just let me know, and I'll find a different way to say vehicle or something like that. But in continuing with the Boston LA tradition, I did want to add a quick slide for folks who are in LA in here to show some respect to you as we continue. And this is just this past year. We're still waiting on 2 more teams to follow the trend, but we'll make it happen. Okay, so let's go into the conversation. Which are you? Introverts, extroverts? Extroverts are oriented outward, okay? Toward other people, toward action over reflection. They draw energy from social interaction, and they tend to be outspoken and gregarious. These are your folks who are very much the life of the party. These are the ones who are out there in certain ways when it comes to being in social environments. Introverts, conversely, are oriented toward the inner life of thought. They're inward. They tend to be reserved and cautious. They find social interaction draining and need solitude to recharge. The biggest misconception is that introverts are antisocial. How many folks have heard that as introverts? I mean, I say, yeah, let's just not be careful. Introverts are not antisocial at all. We just recharge a little bit differently. So we're going to explore what some of those look like. So let's take a look at some 10 signs that show that you are an introvert. Let me give some sort of affirmation. It could be a head nod, it could be a snap, it could be a clap, it could be a shout. If you see yourself here, sign number 1. You prefer to hang out with just one person at a time. That's right. I know I do, for sure. I even got an Airbnb by myself. I grab like the entire place. I don't do like private rooms. I just set up shop. Number 2, you prefer solo hobbies. Reading, hiking. I'm based in Tucson, Arizona, so there's a lot of outdoors things that go on for folks that are introverts. You do not like small talk. You don't say anything unless it's good. And I try to be a steward of that. If I have something to say, I want to make sure that it's going to be impactful or meaningful. The one thing you can't get back is time wasted. I think Samuel L. said that in one movie. I can't remember which one it is, but I want to give him credit. You feel uncomfortable around loud people. Some folks in the room that are like, okay, my family's loud. I got nothing but love for them, but during the holidays, I definitely sequester when I head back for breaks into my old room and kind of set up shop if I can. That's for sure. Number 5, you do not like attention. This will be an interesting one. Okay, what does that mean to you? Anybody want to chime in? When you see you do not like attention, what does that mean to you? Go ahead.
I'd rather do that behind the scenes stuff versus being in front of the camera.
You'd rather be behind the scenes, behind the camera than be in front. Anybody else interpret that a different way or have an addition? Yeah.
For me, it's contextual, like my birthday, yes, like I have a hobby to it.
Okay.
But just like if I'm in a meeting and it's like, oh, we're going to give a shout out to maybe I'll blah, 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 that way.
Yes, so on the birthday, maybe that's the time I do want that. But if we're going to give a shout out, no thank you. I'm very similar. I'm not a big birthday person, personally, but if I'm to receive an award, which I'm always grateful for, I don't want the red carpet. I'd rather have someone, the diploma sort of mailed to you, kind of than anything else, you know? Did you want to chime in?
I was going to say, feedback on what you said. If the attention requires like to be social, then I don't like. So I had a meet and greet for my new job, and like my body just physically somehow migrated to the door.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't like
Yeah, so the meet and greet, your body migrates to the door. Mine would do something similar. I came in on Saturday and I went to the opening social and then they had sort of the Black African American social after. I wanted to get there, but 5:30, 5:45, I was done. After Cal spoke, I was checked out. I took myself the half-hour walk back up to the Airbnb, which is also part of being an introvert. How far away can I get while still being within reason? I took myself back there and kind of crashed for the night. Let's keep going. Number 6. Whenever you're in a meeting, you never ask a question at the end. I think that deserves a clap. Are any folks in here that are that person? Okay, making sure, because introvert or extrovert, I can't stand it. Meeting's over at 2:15, 2:13, 2:14, someone asks a question. It's not just a question, it's like a legitimate, theoretical, hypothetical, metaphysical question that folks want to ask that really digs into it. Introverts aren't going to do that. You love to communicate in text. Using your emails, this is script, this is text message in general. The things you find yourself doing over talking on the phone. For me, talking on the phone sort of suggests a level of commitment, and I like it. But I can do a couple things if I'm texting. If I'm talking, I gotta focus. Maybe we're not there yet. We can get there. Maybe not right now. Number 8, you prefer to work alone. So this is different from solo hobbies. This is maybe you apply for a position that you're the only one in the department, maybe not necessarily identity-wise, but my last position was sort of a director of social justice, and it was just me. So that's something I tailor myself towards. Group work, stay away from it. I'll absolutely do it individually, but group work is not the best teammate in that environment, depending on what we're talking about. Number 9, you are very good at reading people and tend to think heavily before you speak. Now this can transcend over to extroverts as well, and reverse for sure. But introverts, as we'll learn a little bit later, there's something else within us that causes us to sit back just a little bit longer when considering what's in front of us before we actually speak up or make a move. And finally, you're a very private person who trusts only a small amount of people. For sure, myself included. I'm extremely private. Everything I have is not only passport protected, but fingerprint. I'd do my eyeballs if I could, facial recognition, whatever. I tend to be that kind of person as well, but it's also, I've learned different things throughout life. Experience also sort of jades you a little bit, but also softens you up depending on your experience. So this actually translates. A lot of folks can tend to see these signs as negative. Right? Introverts are standoffish. This is where that antisocial stigma comes from. But I want to say one thing to our introverts in the room. It's okay. It's totally fine. The majority of this room, minus from what I asked the first time, 2 folks, maybe 3 or 4, are introverts. You're higher ed professionals, you're work professionals in student affairs or otherwise. You've done all right, comparatively speaking. Don't let any of this get in the way of where you're headed next. I want to be very clear about that. How many of us have been this person? At a party, at a social, at a conversation. I came out here by myself, so this has been me since Saturday. I know a few folks floating around from my time in higher ed, but for the most part, this is me. Here's a statistic for you, though. How many folks knew that introverts make up less than 1/3 of the world's population? Less than 1/3. The majority of this room are introverts, which is interesting. When we look to our left and to our right here, we see each other. But once we leave this room, not so much. So what does that mean? That means we're constantly battling a world that's not designed for us. When we look around at our identities, how many times have we heard that conversation? As a black man, I know I have. As black women, for sure. Women of color, people of color, LGBTQ, class, disability, we go on and on and on. When we tackle on a conversation of introversion and look at it from a diversity lens, it expands that conversation. That's kind of what we want to do today as we approach finding out ways to work with our students, our colleagues, and really ourselves in navigating these waters in this machine called higher education. So let's talk a little bit about it biologically, chemically. I talked earlier about, we're going to speak about what's called the ascending reticular activating system. So let's talk about that. Introversion and extroversion are personality types. They are a result of chemicals balancing in your body. The ascending reticular activating system is located in your brain's stem. Its purpose is to regulate one's level of arousal. So let's talk about this for a second. The optimal level of arousal for introverts and extroverts, for example, would be, let's say, 5. And that's what we're looking at on the screen. Extroverts, on average, tend to operate at 5 and below. They wake up in the morning, they're below a 5. They want to get themselves to a 5 to be an optimal level of arousal. So what do they do if you're starting at 0? Okay, very good. That's my test to see if anybody had heard this before. To get themselves to a 5, extroverts put themselves in stimulating situations to raise that level of arousal from 0 to a 5. This is why the extrovert says, hey, do you want to get lunch? Do you want to head out? Hey, do you want to do this together? Do you want to take a walk? Do you want to find different ways to raise their level of arousal so it's at an optimal point at number 5? Introverts, conversely, wake up, we're at a 7, at 8, on jump. Because we just read that BuzzFeed article last night. Oh, we spent so much time looking out the window trying to figure out what's going on. Oh, our dreams even take us into different worlds for some weird reason. We wake up and we're already heightened. So when the extrovert hits us and says, hey, I'm going down to the convention center, do you want to get breakfast? We say, I think I'm going to go home. We pop on our Hootie and the Blowfish if you're me. Darius Rucker, maybe a little bit of Nas, depending on what you're feeling like for that moment. And you take a stroll down to the place, maybe hit Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, IHOP, maybe by yourself, just to bring yourself down to a 5. But either one of us can go above or below a little bit too much. Once an introvert goes a little bit below that 5 too much, then we want to say, hey, what's going on? What's going on for the night? Does anybody want to go out? Folks want to make something happen? Maybe the extroverts, when they get a little bit pacified, we're like, actually, I'm going to call this one night. I appreciate it. And we find different ways to recharge our batteries, and that's really what it's about as introverts and extroverts. Interesting fact about introversion and extroversion, introverts and extroverts, brain image studies have shown that stimuli travel a longer path through brains of introverts than do extroverts. This is when I talked earlier about taking a little bit longer to think about things before we speak up. You see down here the pathway that establishes problem solving and meaning. Introverts tend to hit that in multiple ways rather than extroverts kind of go straight through. Introverts are the ones that are trying to, as we mentioned earlier, be behind the scenes, think strategically, and analyze what's going on in front of us so we get the best result possible. We're looking at efficacy in certain ways. Extroverts are the ones that can be a little bit more flamboyant and boisterous in front of the screen. These are the ones who may have the capital and the ability to galvanize folks in a traditional westernized sense, using maybe some of the strategies that the introvert team have put together to make things happen. These are how a lot of folks run on their political platforms and their leadership platforms and try to surround themselves with people who tend to be a little bit more analytical, and oftentimes those folks are identified as introverts. Now again, it's not absolute, but oftentimes this is what we're looking at. Okay, great. I'm going to be picking brains and stories as we go, so I appreciate you staying alive. I'm a big Batman fan. I did a panel just Saturday with a couple of colleagues of mine that we do every year at San Diego's Comic-Con, talking about how to use comic books as relations to diversity in the real world. I did a TED Talk that spoke about that very topic. Batman is my guy, for sure. And it's relevant for me because it's this idea of wearing the mask. I feel like me personally, from 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. or when I'm on the clock, this is me. Fighting off everybody, working with everybody. In this case, he's in Gotham City, but for me, it's just everybody I interact with. It's not necessarily a bad thing, I want to be clear. But I feel like I gotta become somebody else just a little bit in order to effectively do this. But from 5:01 to 8:59 a.m., I'm on my own, as best as I can be. So it's floating, trying to figure things out, trying to understand what this means. But I mentioned earlier this idea when we intersect this concept of wearing the mask with identities, that it can really become sometimes triggering if we don't have folks there that can support us. I'd love to hear from some folks in the audience if you've had any experiences as an introvert, with coupling that with your own identities, whether that's race, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, and how that has maybe posed a little bit of a challenge during your time in higher ed. Yeah.
My name is Alexis. I'm a current graduate student. I'm interning at a community college, and my supervisor has encouraged me to put myself out there, collaborate with different departments on campus, and just kind of like make myself known.
Yes.
But for me, it's kind of hard because I'm like, it's not so easy to like go out there and like reach out and talk. And I appreciate the fact that when he's with a professional or somebody he knows, like he tries to connect me with that person. But I don't know, like oftentimes I feel bad about it, but I'm like, okay, it's my personality type.
Yes.
So kind of like that's something that I've encountered, and it'd be nice to find like strategies to cope with that.
Yes, thank you. Alexis talks about a very nice graduate student being asked to venture out, maybe build connections with different offices and departments, or really just make yourself known. But the challenge is, well, maybe as an introvert, that's just not what I want to do, or I feel comfortable doing. How do I develop some coping strategies to massage that? Great answer, thank you. Anybody else in the chime in? Yeah, please.
Yes, from experience as professional staff member at a large public institution, I too have been invited to different socials. I just don't go.
Mm-hmm.
But if I see you on campus, I'll speak to you, but I will go to a group of people and insert myself in a conversation and make those connections. That just does not happen.
Yeah, when it comes to social, like my friend here said, it's something I'm oftentimes willing to tap out. But if I catch you individually at the social or around the social or elsewhere, then we'll interact and maybe probably have more of a fruitful conversation even than we would if we were in this one particular environment. Thank you for that. I'm going to transition off of those 2 points, but I think it's relevant for this next slide. I'll talk about some of the examples of student affairs functional areas. We're looking on the screen, I'll read them out loud in case folks can't see them in the back. We have academic advising, admissions, alumni relations, athletics, campus recreation, career services, counseling and health services, disability services, enrollment management, financial aid, fraternity and sorority life, multicultural affairs orientation, registrar's office, residential life. That's just a couple of many. How many folks see themselves in any of these how many folks work currently in any of these particular areas? Okay, very nice. How many folks that put their hands up, and identify as introverts, find it easy to go to work as an introvert in your own introvert identity without having to turn it off? So what okay. How many folks as introverts feel like they can go to work in any of these offices and student affairs as a dignified introvert without having to strategically figure out how you want to operate? How many folks feel like they can as introverts? How many folks feel like they cannot as introverts? Very interesting. What does that tell you about student affairs and the ways in which it's formatted for introverts? Say it again? It's not formatted for introverts, right?
A lot of it is communal and collaborative. I work under multicultural affairs. We do a lot of retreats.
Yes.
And it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm expected to go and be on for 3 days with people and students.
Yes. Yes. I have a colleague whose first time in student affairs was this year. She was is a clinical psychologist, but was not in the student affairs hired sector. And she called me after her first student affairs retreat and said, "Wow, what is this?" I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Why are we all," if she was at UCLA, "why are we going to San Diego to have this conversation? Why don't we just go somewhere here? Or why is this necessary?" And not that there's no benefits to it. We community build, we team build, we find relationships in ways that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. But for the introverts, it's not designed for your success in the same exact way. And there are symptoms to extroverted worlds. And what I mean by symptoms of an extroverted world is, as a result of being an extrovert, here are some of the benefits that are laid out for you. There are heavily promoted careers in the service industry. This idea that we are designed to serve others, which is arguable on either side of the coin, but serve others in a particular way is the important piece to look at. And that is in group settings and large-scale settings. There's mandatory team-based learning models, group work, committees, task forces. I've been hired at different institutions where I was, again, viewed as the expert, but was also micromanaged or double-backed on in a different way, where, well, if you need me to do this, just trust that I can do this in an autonomous way if you allow me to. We mentioned team-building activities and frequent icebreakers. Now, this is stuff that I'm not against. I'm just highlighting what we see in the world as introverts paying attention to student affairs as designed for extroverts. I have a ton of icebreakers. I have a whole folder on them. They help me out when I do some of my own work today and visceral change. But at the end of the day, what other icebreakers can we do? And we'll talk about that as we close out. And fourth, branding for success, networking, conferences, social media. There are different things we've got to do when we want to be sort of turned off and turned inward. We have to be outward. We've got to spend a couple days in these conferences, maybe go to these socials, maybe interact with certain people, do a presentation for hundreds of folks that gives us publicity and experience in ways that maybe my strengths are just one-on-one conversations, and I can give you something that you won't get from anybody else. But the world isn't tailored to magnify that in ways it does some of these other things. Assimilating to work culture or the peer dynamic. We talked about how it's not designed for us. So what happens if you're that introvert and you show up and say, this isn't really my flow, I'm just gonna hang out. I was that guy who, okay, we're all gonna hop in the van and go up to, the center. Can I drive alone? I take my own car, go by myself? Well, that's really not what we do here. Well, is there an issue if I do? Well, not necessarily. Okay, I'll meet you there. What time? And I'm there, I'll participate, but I need that moment to prepare to what I'm gonna walk into for this next 8 hours or two days. I need time to come back and decompress. What we need to do is create a culture where that becomes acceptable and understandable, not one that gets challenged. I actually just started binging Daria again. It's on Hulu, and it's been a while. I love this show. Look at it from a different lens now as an older adult, and she's one of the introvert idols that I have. So let's talk about the graduate experience. These are direct quotes. One graduate student said, "Academia is a profession of opposites. Long periods of social isolation, research, and writing are punctuated by brief periods of intense social engagement, job interviews, teaching, conferences, and meetings. There are few, if any, supports in place for those students who struggle with the extremes of introversion and extroversion that academia Very powerful statement from a graduate student. Another one said, graduate seminars can aggravate tendencies of introversion. Such seminars are often so intimidating that I suspect many introverts finally lapse into silence, if not complete disengagement, and withdraw within the first or second year of graduate school. Folks who have been to graduate school, attained a master's or a terminal degree of some sort, how many folks have experienced a period of burnout? How many folks experience a period of burnout due to this conversation of being an introvert and feeling like you are demanded to do more than maybe you find necessary? I don't want to say that you're capable of it, no. Yeah, I was there as well in my first year in graduate school. I almost tapped out for multiple reasons. I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I had good support systems around me to help that. But the problem is that the support system I walked into was not that. It wasn't the one that was designed to support me and help me out. So then that means we understand there's an issue. How can we challenge that? What can we do to be a little bit better? Let's talk about networking. I mean, look where we are. I was at ACPA this other week in Boston. I'm here in NASPA in LA. I'll be at the White Privilege Conference in Iowa coming next week. There's NCORE, I'll be, I mean, so I tend to go everywhere on behalf of business, but if I'm just a graduate student, and we include TBE in the place which I was a part of, this was my first job expo. 7,000 people in New Orleans at the time. Packed! Again, I got my hotel all the way down here, put on my Beats headphones and walked. But I had the luxury of being able to afford this particular place at the time and through a good professional development and find those resources, but we all don't have them. Let's read this out loud. There are countless social events and networking opportunities that introverts find exhausting. Many of those events are characterized by elaborate social rules, governing behavior, and the appropriate topics of conversation. Everywhere, extroverts are working the room, making small talk and laughing in clusters while the introverts are smiling weakly, and it's W-E-A-K, weakly and struggling just to find one person with whom they can speak about their research. Usually the introverts leave early if they find energy to come at all. Over time, introverted students face a huge relative disadvantage in the reach of their professional networks. And so I know a lot of folks who struggle in this particular environments. Again, we need to find ways to create spaces where introverts can find success. I know for sure in the hiring market it can be a little bit challenging, so let's dig into that just a little bit. Folks know who this is? How about this? J.K. Rowling. What we got here? Say it again. Rosa Parks. The GOAT. Michael Jordan. 44. Barry Oates. Would you all hire these folks? You know, why would you hire them? How do you know you would hire them? Because of the success they had. Because the success they had. But you know what they all have in common? They're all famous introverts. Which one could probably argue that once they show up to an interview, you might feel otherwise. And that's the challenge we run into as introverts all the time. The hiring process is not necessarily designed for us in the way it shows up. There are so many job candidates with excellent written credentials. So many of them. But when we sit across from somebody as a hiring committee, we're looking for, what's the word that begins with an F? Fit. We're looking for fit. Introverts tend to show up super reserved. Hey, how's it going? My name's Sherard. So Sherard, tell us about the time you challenged a supervisor. Well, there was this one time where I wanted to advocate for these marginalized identities, and I think we had a good conversation with a little bit more full than that. But the answer tends to be succinct and accurate. We end the meeting, we have a deliberation, the staff said, the person is a little too laid back for me. I don't know if they'll fit in here. What? What are we hiring? Are we hiring this person on fit, or are we hiring because they can do the job? Are we not paying attention to the environment that they're in? Are we not paying attention to the fact that it's now 3 o'clock, they've been up since 7, meeting with an average of 50 people at a time, in any given room, including the students who are telling you like it is, over some ice cream? I mean, yes, let's take all these into consideration when we have this conversation. Extroverts are pretty well suited for that. Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely, we have a nice social response that also incorporates this idea of fit. That's what we want here, but they may not be the best person. I venture to guess folks like Michael Jordan, Rosa, J.K. Rowling, even Barack Obama found trouble getting past that particular stage. And a lot of us in this room, myself included at some point in time, are to blame for that. When we buy into the way the system operates, at least this westernized way, of articulating what it means to do an interview and hold it the right way. I just downloaded this album not too long ago, Alessia Cara. It's great. I'm late. I know I'm late. I swear, I heard it before, I've had it for a while, but she's also one of my introvert idols. This song was like my anthem when it first came out a couple years back. It was called Here, folks don't know. So let's close out the last couple of slides. I want to talk a little bit about the undergraduate experience. This is some more information I got. Some resident assistants at the time said I became an RA because I'm an introvert and I wanted to put myself out there more. Another one said I became an RA because as an introvert, no one really made any attempts to get to know me. And I wanted to change that for other people like me. Office assistant. I'm a big time introvert, and I don't think I could ever be an RA, but I do like helping people, and I think one at a time is good enough for me. Another one said, I didn't think I was making friends in the best way possible because I was so scared to meet people, so I decided to try and be an office assistant. There are levels to this. There are some introverts that say, I'm more reserved, and too reserved to be an RA, but I think I can make this happen. There were some that say, I'm reserved, but I can't be an RA because I want to push myself in different ways. So let's talk a bit about the way those levels show up. Social introversion. Same deal. Give me a nod, give me a shout, give me something if you find yourself here. Social introversion is the closest thing to the commonly held understanding of introversion, and that it is a preference for socializing with small groups instead of large ones, or sometimes it's a preference for no group at all. Solitude is often preferable for those who score high in social introversion. Social introverts, are you in the room? Okay, very nice. We're going to look at 4 of these in total. Thinking introversion. People with high levels of thinking introversion don't share the aversion to social events people usually associate with introversion. Instead, they're introspective, thoughtful, and self-reflective. Thinking introverts, are you in the room? Very nice, okay. Anxious introverts. Unlike social introverts, anxious introverts may seek out solitude because they feel awkward and painfully self-conscious around other people as a result of lacking confidence in their own social skills. But oftentimes their anxiety doesn't fade when they're all alone. Anxious introverts, are you in the room? See folks? Okay, I see you. Yes, let's show some love. And finally, restrained or reserved introverts. These folks tend to operate at a slightly slower pace, preferring to think before they speak or act. They also might take a while to get going. They won't, for instance, wake up immediately and spring into action. Restrained introverts, are you in the room? Okay, I tend to find myself here a little bit more. I start out very slow in the morning. I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm a hot chocolate guy all the way through, so I don't know if that helps or hurts. But it's one of the first things I go to. I also close my day with it, but I tend to find myself there. How many folks would see a little bit of everything in their own day-to-day as an introvert? Okay, yeah, and that's absolutely possible as well. I want to move on to a slide next that I want folks to really think about and pay attention to. We'll take a second and hold it there. I love to ask people in the room, what words stand out to you? Go ahead and shout them out if something stands out to you. Sorry. What else? Be nice and loud. Shell. One more.
You're in your head too much.
Say it again.
You're in your head too much.
You're in your head too much. Yes. This is an actual slide. I mean, if you type in, for example, introversion on Google Images, this will pop up. Folks know that back in 2010, the American Psychological Association identified introversion as a possible indicator for mental health disorder. 2010. Now, I'm 31 years old. I get it, how to navigate introversion, how to massage that out. But what about the young folks that was brains a little bit more malleable? Elementary school students, high school students. I've always believed that college was identity development first, academic success second. So our college students who are hearing this, who are being told in what some consider to be the authority, that you might be on the verge of being identified and classified as having a mental disorder, a mental illness, mental health concern. What? Why? Well, because you're displaying sort of what we would consider to be introverted tendencies. We need to find different ways to approach this. Mental health is not a disorder. We all want to practice self-care in certain ways. So how can you include what it means for me to be an introvert in your day-to-day to make sure that I'm afforded the proper self-care? We want to make sure we're doing all that we can to support our students. So then how can we do better? Well, we can create environments that recognize and accept introverts immediately. I used to be major on guidelines and expectations when I worked with student staff and staff in general. And respect, so on and so forth. If you wanted to, go ahead and say, we accept all identities, including introverts. Find a way to expose it and get it out there. But make it clear immediately. I know I would take notice, for sure. Not just because I do this presentation nationally, but in general, I know I would take notice. Take an interest in their work. Ask suggestions for what they want to do. Again, understanding how the system is designed to benefit extroverts in a particular way. How can we challenge that and flip it on its head and find ways to center introversion in a particular way that doesn't get away from what we want to accomplish, which is group camaraderie, but does it in a way that makes everybody feel valued, like they have a space here. Set them up for their success, not the perceived success. We know how this is designed. Cafeterias are set up in an extreme way. We encourage them to do team building activities in a particular way. How can we establish success for introverts in particular, and not one that is sort of right on par with the way things have always been done? Construct team building activities that include small numbers of silent participation. One of my favorite team building activities is line up silently by birthday. Problem solved. I used to pull out a map back in the day. Jot down, or in one color the states you have been to. In another color the states you haven't been to. Another color states you want to go to, or something along those lines. And then talk with one or two people to figure out their experience in the particular states. Different ways you can change these team builders from the human knot, and everybody's all clustered together, or the hula hoop one, to smaller ones that break out in smaller groups and say, how can we have an intimate conversation? How can we maybe express different things? Another cool one that I like to do is a dyadic encounter. If folks haven't done that, write a question on a sheet of paper, pair up, go somewhere, go outside the room, go to the conference room, go outside at the patio tables and ask the question and have a conversation. We appreciate that, I promise you. I promise you. Alter your supervisory style to be more intentional with this group. Here's not that folks in this room need this, but I'm going to offer it anyway. Here is an interview tip for you when they ask you, so what's your supervisory style? If you jot nothing down today, jot this down. It's when you tell them, I appreciate that question, very good question. And, as I thought about this, I don't think one actually should have a supervisory style. I think one supervisory style should be fluid. I think we naturally tend to gravitate towards something that we're most like. I tend to operate best in autonomy. But as a supervisor, my job is to make sure that my supervisees get all that they need. And if you require a level of guidance and structure, then my job is to provide that. If you require a level of autonomy, my job is to provide that. I can't say that my style is this way because it might do you a disservice. That's the answer you want to give. I'll check it off and I'll move on. Okay, I like the way this person's headed. Most folks can appreciate that. But aside from that, it's the truth. One of the big student affairs buzzwords that I'm very much familiar with during my time in higher ed is that we need to meet students where they are. Actually, they say where they at. We need to meet students where they're at. Okay? Next. See, for me, that's incomplete. I respect it. We want to meet students where they are. I get it. But that's incomplete. As student affairs professionals, we then have a duty of care to not just meet students where they are, but to then get them to where they need to be. Which is why far too often when I do organizational trainings, everybody's in a room except executive directors, leadership, and VPs. We do a good job of hiding behind our 15 years of experience and say, oh, I did this. I get it, I've done it. My doctorate showed that. My JD showed that. Well, no, it doesn't. Because it's not what it was back when you got your doctorate, when you got your JD. Times have changed. You need to understand how to support your students, how to support your staff and your colleagues. We have a duty of care to get people where they need to be. And introversion is a critical component of this. Not just acknowledging it, but providing resources and ways that we can be best supporters for folks who identify as such. And the last takeaway I want to leave folks here with, create mentorship opportunities for one-on-one development. Group work can also help here as well. But largely one-on-one goes a long way. I had the honor of leading 2 different men of color initiatives at 2 different institutions. Different sizes, large scale, small scale. We did a lot of different things. And one thing I wanted to do differently was figure out how can we speak to the community. We did something I channeled and founded and created there called the Barbershop Talk. We brought in local barbers to cut hair. As we, in the black community, the barbershop and the salon is a place of, it's home away from home in many ways. So how can we introduce this and let these young brothers find intimate interaction with other brown and black men who have gone through it in some way, in a safe environment, mentorship opportunities, whether it's the initiative itself or different ways we can utilize this initiative to make it happen. And this and caucus groups in general do a great job of paying attention to this, creating one-on-one development. I want to take a quick second before I close out and move into questions to see if anybody has any stories of their own or experiences of where they've been able to navigate their own introversion hiring or help somebody else navigate theirs. Yes?
Something that I figured out for myself, and I kind of do this when I do a lot of events, and I'm sure we all do that kind of thing. And I don't necessarily stray from like the attention, like I can speak in front of people or whatever, but I find that I do so much better in events when I have a very clearly defined role.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are the MC of this event,
Yes.
or you're doing the registration table, or you're doing this. But if you just throw me in and say like, just like mingle and make sure people are like getting food, like no, like I can't, like, so so I end up doing that when I'm organizing an event. I think I'm more a really specific role, and I'm realizing that that's probably a manifestation of something that I need for myself.
Yeah.
So maybe other people have felt that before.
Yeah, so, finding ways to, some of us require a little more structure than others in guidance, and we can't function in the same way effectively if we're just told to go out there and be visionaries or just create this particular something. A level of structure and guidance will help us out, because putting us out there in a social environment in that capacity might cause us to just simply retreat based on just who we are and how we come to learn. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, for me, I kind of want to talk about one of the small team builders I've done
Great.
to create some great interaction. And I use it a lot in diversity and inclusion work, but it's also to help create critical listening skills. And it's 4 questions, and people partner up. And one's A and one's B, and the whole point of it is person A asks a question, and then all they can do is listen.
Yes.
They can't say anything else. They can nod their head, and they can re-ask the question in case the person's struggling. So the first question is, who are you? The second question is, who do others think you are? The third question is, who do you pretend to be? And the fourth question, to make sure people are listening, is, who do you think I am? And it's one of those things that it creates this deep conversation that's meaningful, and students really get to know their fellow students and know that it's 16 minutes of critical thinking and critical listening to create a big impact in a relationship in such a fast way. I got that from my undergrad professor, San Bernardino. Just want to give him a shout out.
I like that. I like that. And I think a critical piece of that we often have missed with introversion, at least in my experience, is the level of intimacy. And I don't mean that in a sort of critical relationship building where best friends piece, but how's the weather up there? Is it really our flow?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit deeper than that. What else can you give me? Because we spend so much time above that optimal line, and we probably already had that conversation sometime, if not today, with ourselves. So what else can we do to challenge that? And I think what you offer gives an intimate look at just the individual in a symbiotic way. So that goes a very long way. Yes?
So this is a question for you, Sherard, or just for general conversation. So how do y'all navigate working with a director or supervisor who's also extremely introverted? And I'd love to hear for those who are directors or supervisors, kind of process for how you, work with your supervisors.
I'd love to hear what the room has first. The question was, how do you navigate working with a direct supervisor who's also an extreme introvert, or sort of very comfortable in their introversion to the point where they display it unapologetically? How do you work with this individual? And I'm assuming I can extend on your question to get the supervisor, to get the skill set you need to be prepared for the next level. Have you heard from you yet? Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, my name's Elizabeth. My box is extremely introverted in the idea that she avoids the office at any time that she possibly can. And so, two of us working together are really intentional with our time. So we have a bi-weekly meeting that has an agenda. If we don't have anything to talk about, we don't meet. If we can handle it by email, we do. And she's encouraging professional development that is good for me. So I have a plan for me, and she has a plan for her. And so she isn't somebody who is going to push me to put myself out there, to connect with other departments. But if I want to do it and I'm passionate, she'll let me. And she'll support me where she can, but I know that she doesn't have the go on her own either to go out and make those connections. And so having a professional development plan for me that she's approved and being able to handle anything we can by email, because we do. We certainly do. I think that's also respectful of each other's time, right? And knowing that our time is usually best spent working apart when we can. So, yeah, good luck.
Let's hear what you got.
Yeah, my director is also an introvert. She's an introvert as well. I think I'm a little bit more introverted. Same thing when I go into our one-on-ones, we have these one-on-ones, I have an agenda. And we have some common areas that we can discuss to kind of break the ice a little bit because I feel I need that a little bit to kind of make that connection on the front end. And then we move into business, and when I know my agenda, I just flat out ask, do you have anything for me? And she says no. That's the end of the one-on-one. But to your point as well, she is supportive of any opportunities that I bring to her. If I have an idea and I say, can I try this? She says yes, because she knows I'm an introvert. She doesn't ever want to stop that progress that I'm trying to make, because for me that's a big deal. Like I was approved to go to a conference and I just didn't go.
Yeah.
And so she's supported in that area.
Very nice. And that's huge. I think that's a great question. Those are two fantastic answers, and I hope folks are able to hear them. It's important. We talk about operating in an extroverted world. What happens when we do come into contact with an introvert? Well, we depend on it in a certain way for our own personal advancement, whether it's family, environmental, in this particular case, the workplace. And one thing that my previous institution did well was, and it depends on what you're looking for. The fact that they have this as an option, I challenge that they move to it as the sort of the mandate. One thing they offer is something called career conversations, which is your annual evaluation. Instead of me evaluating you and telling you how I feel about your performance, which I think is relevant in particular ways, this sort of turns it on its head and it speaks to your experience and how you plan on seeing yourself next year. So, where do you see yourself moving forward? How was your experience this year? How did I do as a supervisor? What could I have done a little bit differently? What do you need from me moving forward? It assumes that you'll be back, not just at the institution, but with me. So how can I be better for you through the overall purpose of that particular conversation? And it's official, and it's legitimate, so this is the one that goes up to the executive level and so on and so forth for review with respect to your performance evaluation. So it's a very, very good question. I think there's a couple different ways to answer that, and they're all on the head. I'm going to go ahead and close it out. We have about 5 minutes. Again, I wanted to state that this is being recorded. If folks want access to this video, I have some sheets up here for you to sign up. You are also, disclaimer, opting into newsletters, as annoying newsletters you get. There will be an option to kind of opt out at any point in time, so feel free to hit that at the very bottom. But you can sign your name and your email and put your institution if you like, your organization, and we'll go ahead and make sure you get this when it's prepared, edited, and ready. And of course, if you do all that we talked about today, this is going to be your introvert life moving forward. Recharge your batteries, feel a little bit better, and we're good to go. I appreciate you all.